Alright folks, Vinicius here with another video for the Microsoft Copilot in Azure series, and today we are going to cover configuration and management for your AKS cluster using Microsoft Copilot in Azure. So let's get started by opening Copilot here, and of course Copilot can understand your AKS cluster, the configuration, can give you guidance on how to manage your cluster. But the thing is, Copilot can also look at the documentation for AKS and understand what are the best practices and provide you guidance on how to apply those things. So let me get started by asking Copilot about best practices for my AKS cluster. In this case, I didn't ask Copilot to do anything. I only asked Copilot what are best practices that I might have missed on my cluster. And of course, it looked at the documentation and it brought me some information about how to properly configure my cluster, availability zone, auto scaling, and a bunch of other things that I can look into. And I can even ask Copilot for more information. And then if I do want to apply that configuration, I can go and ask Copilot for help on how to apply that configuration. Let me give you an example. One of the things that Microsoft Copilot will see in the documentation is it's probably a good practice to restrict the access of the cluster API to IP addresses that I know, and then you restrict the access for managing your cluster to only those authorized IP addresses. So I'm asking Copilot here to restrict the access to my IP address only. I'm going to select the cluster that I want to apply this configuration from the place that I'm at, and then I can go and say, yes, I want to apply this configuration, and Copilot can go and configure that setting into my AKS cluster, restricting the access to the cluster API to only my IP address. This is pretty cool. It's already configured. I can go ahead and move on to the next thing, which is the price tier. So one of the things about AKS is that when you deploy the cluster, you're going to say if this is for development or testing purposes, or if this is going to run a production workload, and then I need an SLA. And that will define what is the pricing tier that you want to deploy your AKS cluster into. Now, I can ask Copilot, for example, for changing the price tier that I'm operating right now to standard. I'm going to select the cluster again. And here you can see that it gives me a brief description on what is the free tier, recommended for development and testing purposes, standard, which is the first tier for production workloads, providing some SLA, and then a premium tier for mission critical and also high-level production workloads. So in this case, I am on the free tier. I can move, I'm on the standard tier, so I can either move to the free or the premium tier, and Copilot can help me in that process. So I'm going to cancel for now. I don't want to move that. And next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Copilot for helping me set up my cluster. So I can say, set up backup for my AKS cluster. I'm going to select the cluster that I want to operate. And in this case, Copilot will take me to the backup pane, and then I can start the process of configuring backup for this particular cluster. Now, this is a process where I have to install an extension, and then I have to configure how I want to back up this particular AKS cluster, and all of this process can be managed through Copilot. I can go and say launch install backup, and then Copilot will guide me through the process of configuring backup for this AKS cluster. And that, as you can see, it brought me to the install AKS backup extension, which will just install the extension. But next, as I want to configure how this backup will be executed, Copilot can also help me in understanding how that is done and then applying the configuration that I want into my AKS cluster. So that's it for now. One thing to remember is whenever you get a response from Copilot, remember for thumbs up or thumbs down if you like or if you don't like the response. Give us feedback on how the response went. Even if it was a good response, let us know. We want to know about how Copilot is responding to your prompts. and keep an eye out for other videos in this series. Remember to like and subscribe this channel so you can know when the new video is coming up. And that's it. I hope you liked it, and I'll see you in the next video.